Hey everyone, welcome back to the Content Matters podcast. It is, I almost said it was September. It's October. I'm thinking I'm in a rush to go back to the even warmer months. It is October. We're coming close to the end of the year, and I'm really happy to have a really great guest with me here today. Colleen Jones is the president of Content Science. She is a content expert and a Star Wars fan. My kids, Colleen, would absolutely love you to death. We watch way too much Star Wars. Content Science is an award-winning firm, and she and her team, they've advised and trained hundreds of leading organizations to become like the jetties of content-led transformation. That's cool. Colleen was also the fractional head of content at MailChimp during its high growth period before its $12 billion acquisition by Intuit. So that was probably a pretty cool time for you. A passionate entrepreneur, Colleen has led Content Science to develop the content intelligence software, WRX, is that how we say it, or WWorks?
Either way is fine. We usually say Content Works. Yes.
Okay. Also, they publish the online magazine Content Science Review and offer a number of online certifications and training through the Content Science Academy. And they also conduct independent research on issues like content operations, which we're going to talk about today, digital transformation, and content effectiveness. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about the Content Advantage book that Colleen has written. She's on her third edition of it. So I'm actually excited to kind of get some insights from you on your book. But we'll leave that to the end because our first part of our conversation is going to be all around this idea of content operations. So welcome, Colleen. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Barb. A big fan of the Content Matters podcast and really excited to be here.
Cool. Thank you. So let's just kind of dive right into it because I was reading the report. It is huge. It is packed with great insights. What led you to start studying content operations, and how many years have you been running the report and studying it?
Yeah, we've been studying content operations since about 2015. And one impetus for me to focus on this was, Content Science would work with some great companies, great organizations on content strategy and, make some great plans in collaboration with these great organizations. We'd have some great ideas. We'd really think through how they could happen. And then, we'd kind of send the clients on their way and then, watch them struggle to execute. And so I got kind of tired of seeing that and thought, there's got to be a way to better help organizations execute on content strategy, especially when it gets complicated and, from 2015 on, the demand for content has just intensified, and the need to scale and things like that just has increased. And so that was one impetus. Let's kind of figure out how to execute on content strategy, and I saw content operations as crucial. And then another kind of similar impetus was my experience at AT&T, where my team would do some great strategy work, design work, content work to help, revamp, improve, modernize the customer experience across different channels. So we'd have, different projects. We'd complete one project and, it was in great shape, but there was no one really to kind of carry it forward, to maintain it, to, kind of make sure the principles that we defined and the standards that we defined really were upheld over time. So we'd move on to a different project and, we're in the midst of that, and then get pulled into a question or issue about a previous project. And that's just not sustainable. So content operations, I see, is really crucial to executing and maintaining content strategy in a really sustainable and scalable way.
It's funny you've been studying it for that long, and I, from the report, it's like we've definitely made advances, but people are still struggling with it. So And the other thing that's kind of impacting it now is AI. So what was your process for kind of adding the AI ideas into the study this year?
Yeah, so we found early on that technology, how that's handled, it is a success factor for maturing content operations. And AI came up a fair amount in our 2023 update. It's been on our radar, since 2015, but in terms of organizations, really starting to report they're doing something with it, that really came up in our 2023 update. So we knew we needed to make it a big focus for this 2025 update. And we asked about, studied everything from how organizations are currently using AI or actually whether they're using it, and then how they're using it, like what use cases are they using AI for, some examples of successes that they're seeing, what specific AI tech they're using. Is it, they're building something custom on one of the major AI models, or they're using tools that they already had that have some AI features in them? What's the story there? And then we also looked at scaling AI adoption. It's one thing to play around with AI, pilot it. It's another thing to really integrate it comprehensively into your content approach. And so we took a look at that as well. And we also took a look at the connection between having mature content operations and having success with AI. Looked at, is there a connection there? Does it matter? And we did find a strong connection. For instance, organizations that report having a higher level of content operations maturity are much more likely to report having faster progress in scaling AI.
Right.
So there's this interesting symbiotic relationship between content operations and AI. And I think not everyone is really fully aware of that. And I hope it's something that really comes out in spreading the word about this report. AI needs content operations to succeed as much as content operations can benefit from AI to scale in a sustainable way. So it's not that content operations needs AI solves all content operations problems. It's that there's this symbiotic relationship where they really can benefit each other if done the right way.
Yeah.
And
that was one of the myths. Sorry, that was one of the myths that you have in the study, that if you have AI, you don't need content operations. And you're saying, yeah, that's not true. And I wouldn't believe that for a minute. I think we would just not be able to do that. I don't think people are thinking clearly when they say that.
Yeah. I think that myth doesn't come necessarily as much from people with content expertise or experience. It's more from, maybe leadership or stakeholders who are getting exposed to AI, or, getting exposed more to the importance of content to their business function, and don't understand the complexity of it. And, that's where that myth, I think, really comes up the most.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about the challenges that you found, the key challenges. But before we even kind of go that far, a lot of the report is based on your content maturity levels. And I thought it would be good if we could at least just cover them at a really high levels, because I know that you're going to come back and say people that are higher maturity level, are doing this better or not. So I just want to make sure that the people that are listening know what you're referring to when you say the content maturity levels.
Yeah. So we developed this maturity model for content operations in the spirit of all models are wrong, but some are useful. And we've found this to be really useful for studying content operations, as well as to support conversations with organizations about addressing content operations where maybe they, didn't have a vocabulary or framework in the past or a way to really address it. So we developed 5 levels in this maturity model, and they run from level 1, which is really chaotic, kind of an ad hoc approach, not really much in terms of content operations, all the way to 5, where there are formal content operations everywhere that they need to be in the organization. And there's even room for some innovation to happen. Someone at level 5 is able to experiment with AI more easily, for example. And there's clear return on investment, clear value from the content operations happening. And then, everything in between from 2 to 4 kind of goes from piloting, experimenting a bit with content operations, to extending content operations to more areas and really sustaining them effectively.
Okay, good. That's a good overview. All right. So let's talk about key challenges then. What were some of the big challenges that you found that were kind of really stood out to you when you did this study?
Yeah. So first I'll note a promising trend that we saw is generally a shift toward slightly more mature content operations. So as a quick example, only 5% of participants reported being at that level 1 chaotic stage, which is a big drop from 20% in 2023. We also had 25% reporting being at level 4. And that's a big jump from 5% in 2023. Also seeing really high aspirations. So, it's not that participants are just willing to let the challenges overcome them. They really are looking to mature content operations. 45% reported they were aspiring to level 5. And that's almost double what we saw in 2023. So all of that, to me, indicates that there is growing interest, recognition of the value of content operations. And so in terms of the challenges, one obstacle that has been pretty consistently at the top for most of our updates, and it was last year and again this year, is lack of content strategy and lack of alignment of content strategy across the organization. And so that, of course, it happens the most with large and enterprise organizations, but we saw it at every kind of organizational size in this update. So that remains a top obstacle. 2 new ones for this update are rapid disruption or change in the organization and lack of resources. So we have not seen these 2 challenges at the top in the past. This is the first time. And in our interviews for the study, as well as just our interaction with clients this year, just some context for what those kinds of disruptions are. We're seeing everything from reorgs, like content leaders and teams having to suddenly report to different leadership. We're also seeing big shifts in business models, big shifts in products, regulatory changes having a big impact on the business, and content product changes, and then starting to experiment with AI. That in and of itself is a big kind of disruptive change. and layoffs as well. And, all of this is happening much faster than in the past. And a lot of it kind of happening all at once because all of these things are very interrelated.
Yeah.
And so, those kinds of challenges, the lack of resources and the disruption and change, we think really call for resiliency. And something I think is good news here is that content operations is a fantastic way to build resiliency into a content approach, especially for, a large organization or an enterprise.
Is that because it puts more process and structure around? Obviously, that's kind of a silly question on my part. That's kind
No, not silly at all. I think it's counterintuitive, especially for, again, people, leaders who maybe aren't as experienced with content. Ironically, the more structure and process and less ad hoc stuff you have in place, the easier it is to adapt to change. It's not a case of, well, things are chaotic, so our approach to content is going to be chaotic too. Quite the opposite.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that one of the challenges, like most of the communications challenges, seem to be around the organization itself and not in the teams directly. Like the teams
Yes.
know what they want to do and they know how to work together, but they can't get management or leadership on board with them.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. So with the way that all of this digital disruption, digital transformation are going, they tend to drive the customer experience to be more and more digital, which means, content is the substance of the, more and more of the customer experience. And so different business functions that maybe didn't impact each other as much in the past in terms of their approach to content are having an impact on each other now. And that's definitely new for a lot of organizations. Not as new for, say, a SaaS, but in a way, every company and organization is SaaSifying just because they're becoming more digital and more of the customer experience requires content. So yeah, I think the organizational level communication is when, a team that's focused on certain content for certain phases of the customer journey is realizing their challenges with another team responsible for content in other phases of the customer journey, and there's no good mechanism to work together.
Yeah. Is that where, like, you, and the study talks about this, the 51% have a clear content vision. So how they have, is that if you don't have that, is that really a really major challenge to being successful in content operations?
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually is one of the long-standing success factors. So I've been curious about, whether that would still be the case with this update. And, my hypothesis was, it's more important than ever, but you never know what you'll actually find in research. But yeah, it's actually the more chaotic things are, the more important content vision is. And it really provides the kind of North Star, maybe a lot around what you do to achieve the vision evolves, changes, but that vision for content doesn't really change that much. And that really helps get a lot of different stakeholders aligned and on board. And, to your point, different teams that have some type of content responsibility across different functions or phases of the customer journey really helps align them as well. So I think what can be really useful for, a large organization and enterprise is to have a really comprehensive, high level, overarching vision that helps unite. And then obviously within specific types of content, specific content experiences, there might need to be more specific strategy and plans. But if they're laddering up to a unified vision, then that's going to work much more effectively than if they're just kind of operating on their own.
In their own silos. So
yeah. Exactly.
All right. I'm kind of going through my list of what I thought was interesting, but let's go back to you. What else did you find? What kind of surprised you or stood out to you as a key challenge?
So there were a couple of surprises. Perhaps what surprised me the most was around preparing to scale AI. So we asked participants what kinds of steps they've been taking or the organization have been taking to prepare for scaling AI, further, more broadly across the organization. And we listed, some steps, some options like updating workflow or strengthening governance. And we also provided the option to fill in something that maybe wasn't listed. And we also provided the option to say, I've taken none of these steps. And the top answer was, we've taken none of these steps.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that really surprised me. And, to me, it just shows that a lot of organizations are not thinking end to end about their approach to AI and its relationship to content. And I think this kind of explains what we're seeing in some other reports, like from McKinsey and MIT, around the state of AI or the state of AI in business, where, McKinsey called out that things are kind of paused because organizations, especially enterprises, realizing that they need to update workflow. And, MIT is calling out, challenges with understanding the ROI. And so I think a lot of what we found in our study explains more specifically and in a more actionable way what's going on, what's really holding up progress with AI. It's because the content operations backbone isn't there in a lot of organizations, and they're going to be stuck until they get that backbone in place.
Yeah, it seems to be a common theme, really, that some people think you just bring AI in, develop your GPTs or your agents, and everything's fine. But when they get into it, you really need to know, what are your requirements? What does your process look like? What's your workflow look like? And if you don't have that stuff, that all the AI assistants and AI agents in the world are not going to give you the success and the outcomes that you really need.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
And content is huge there. Content is huge. And I'm curious because, and this was one of the things that really stood out to me, you don't think that content development should be a key, the first use case for AI.
Right.
Why do you think that? And where do you think, if an organization is going to get started, because I do believe that a lot of organizations are not started yet because they're paralyzed. They don't know how to move forward. What do you think would be the first way to leverage it to kind of get yourselves into that flow?
Yeah. So, the use case of creating content, ironically, we found that was by far the most frequently reported use case. At the same time, that also seemed to be the use case that organizations struggled with the most and had a lot of trouble scaling and was really problematic. We also saw a strong correlation between organizations that are at higher levels of content operations maturity focusing on other use cases, being more likely to focus on like distribution or measurement or other kinds of use cases for content with AI. And so this made a lot of sense to me. I think it might be surprising for a lot of people, but it made a lot of sense to me. That's why I didn't mention it as a surprise. And, the content creation use case, it's very complex. And I think a lot of, especially leaders and executives, are having their eyes open to the complexity and the expertise required to develop the content for their organization. And it's also a very risky use case. So, if you go and launch generative AI across customer experiences, across a lot of content, and you don't have governance shored up, you don't have guardrails in place, you definitely could be open to all kinds of problems with the content being inaccurate or not sustainable, or just a host of potential problems. And actually that's happened. That's part of why there's been the pause and the realization, we need to fix our workflow or take a closer look at governance. And there are a lot of unknowns with generative AI. It's super powerful technology, but at the same time, it does things that no one can fully explain. And MIT Review has some really good articles articulating that really well. So it's powerful, but unpredictable. And do you really want to unleash that across for an enterprise, all of your content? Probably not at this time. I'm not saying it never will be a good use case, but right now, that's probably not the best one to start with. There are a lot of great use cases, and there has been a lot of great innovation of existing content, technology and tools because of AI. And I'm actually more excited about that, and have seen a lot of organizations, and we also, I think, saw this in our study report here, having good success with leveraging innovations within content technology and tools that they're already using, or adding another tool, a new tool to their tool belt or to their technology stack that helps address a problem or issue. One area, this is just one example, a lot of organizations can't make the most of their content for, say, generative AI or other kinds of purposes because the metadata around it is outdated, or it's, spotty. It's not really where it needs to be, where you can fully trust that metadata to drive, say, personalized delivery or insights for reporting, or all of the other really valuable use cases for which metadata is a crucial foundation. Yeah. And there are some great tools now that can help, and a lot of them are leveraging AI to help with filling in the gaps with metadata. So people don't have to do the grunt work of going in and trying to fill in the metadata. That's also a bit risky and error prone. Tools now can help with that. That can be a great use case to start with. Also, content measurement and intelligence. A lot of organizations don't have it. Yep. There's so much that AI can do to help with automating reporting more effectively, and just addressing a lot of the pain points around getting useful data and insight about the impact of content for an organization.
That was content measurement and intelligence. That was one of the ones that stood out to me, was that, only 50% are measuring whether or not their content is performing. But one of the things that I also thought was interesting was, of the what they do measure, the very first one at the top of the list was this internal stakeholder satisfaction. And I thought, that should not be the number one reason your content is considered successful. And that, number two was customer satisfaction, voice of the customer. I have seen so many different companies not even look at voice of the customer data to help them understand if they're creating and presenting the right content to people. It's surprising, really.
Yeah, it is. And it surprises me more and more, I think, every year, because in parallel with that, I'm also seeing the organizations and, the leaders that do put content measurement and intelligence in place really thrive.
Yeah.
It really is the kind of rocket fuel to get lots of different people on board, to get support for the resources that you need to tell better success stories, to make better content decisions over time, which of course leads to more success and better success stories. It's just really crucial to get into place. And if you can do it, it absolutely will just make the content approach and the support for it skyrocket. And I've just seen that again and again and again. And it seems so obvious. And, it's not a case of where I've really come across content leaders or team members who don't want measurement. They certainly would welcome it. It's just not a priority. And I think the difference maker is someone steps up, a leader or executive with a stake in content, and get kind of scrappy and figure out a way to start it and do it to where they can make the case, enough of a case for taking another step, like hiring a content analyst or getting someone on the team trained as a content analyst, or working out a partnership with, business intelligence team or data science team to support them. And then, get more and more data and insight. So it's crucial. And we also find that organizations that are leveraging content measurement and intelligence, they are using diverse sources of data, like voice of customer. And obviously analytics is probably the go-to for a lot of organizations, and certainly super important. But for content, and making content decisions, that can be super helpful to have other kinds of data as well. And yeah, to your point about the internal stakeholder preferences, if you get content measurement and intelligence in place, we find you can actually influence those internal stakeholders much more effectively. And so there's more alignment between what you're getting from content measurement and intelligence and what those opinions of stakeholders are. So it's, if you get that content measurement and intelligence in place, those opinions or preferences aren't as much of a challenge.
Yeah, because they understand and they get it because you're showing them actual data.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. I think we talked a little bit already about some obstacles to maturing content operations, but what are some other ones, like, compared to what you saw last year?
So I think that we saw some consistency, and this just kind of reiterates some of the themes we've already covered. Some consistency and challenges that have showed up in the past, like lack of content data and measurement, or lack of understanding of the effectiveness of content. That was a top challenge in this update, and has been a top challenge in the past. In the past, it was higher, but because we had the disruption and lack of resources challenges, creep up toward the top, that kind of knocked that challenge down. And then we just saw some kind of nuances with the existing challenges. So I mentioned a little bit that the communication or integration of content strategies tended to come up more for enterprises than for other sizes of organizations. The medium and smaller organizations dealing the most with changes and lack of resources, but lack of strategy was still kind of up there. It just was more like number 3 than like number 1. So yeah, I think I hit on all of the big sort of changes in challenges between our previous discussion and what I just highlighted there.
Yeah. The 56% said that they don't do training. I thought that was interesting too. Like that, I guess, I mean, we like to train our content people on technology, but there's a lot more to understanding content operations than how to use a piece of technology. So why do we not put more investment into training them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, process and governance, that is a whole success factor. And we've found within that, one of the nuances is a strong correlation between content-specific training and organization offering that, and higher levels of content operations maturity, as well as overall content success. And if you think about it, content-specific training is easy to implement. Like, of all the things that we've been talking about here, and what it takes to mature content operations, an organization could start offering that today. Like, let a team member sign up for an online course or certification or something.
Yeah.
Like, that is super easy to implement. Come on. And it's so powerful. It is really, the evidence has shown in multiple updates that it correlates strongly to success. So I'm excited about that because, if an organization is kind of in a situation where they want to start maturing content operations, looking for a way to start because, it's tough to do everything all at once. Training is a super smart way to start and getting on the right path. And training around content operations, around AI, modern skills, just a whole lot that organizations could benefit from. And it's not just the content teams or the folks with existing content expertise. It's also the stakeholders and leaders.
Right.
They absolutely would benefit from training around content and AI as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. The Content Operations Center of Excellence, that's something that you talk about in the report that you indicate would be a really good thing for organizations to have, but only a very small percentage implement one. Why do you think it's just that they don't understand what they are? They think that means you have to put all your content people in one little central bucket. Groups don't want that. They want their own content teams kind of thing. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, I think that it is related to kind of that desire to operate in a silo or on your own, and not be held back by bureaucracy. So I think, some confusion of a center of excellence with, more bureaucracy or more hoops to jump through. I think there is some of that there. I think there also is just a lack of, it's just sort of a cycle where no one's really seen, or very few people, since it's not as widely used and implemented at the moment, not as many people know what it is, even consider that something like that would be useful. And it is kind of a rather big change, especially in a large organization or an enterprise. And so it might seem, not feasible or possible, especially without, some evidence or support for it as something that would be helpful. But like I've said, I've seen the Center of Content Excellence work really well multiple times in large organizations. I think it really helps with taking an integrated approach as opposed to, something that's too formal, and also counteracts a lot of the challenges with a very decentralized approach. And it's just a nice and neat way to make it happen. Let's start a Center of Content Excellence. I think people can get their head around that. The concept of content excellence has existed for other business functions for a long time. So there at least is some exposure to that. And I think it's easier to get your head around Center of Content Excellence as opposed to let's take an integrated approach. We did find in our study that organizations reporting higher levels of content operations maturity and success were much less likely to use a decentralized structure to their content approach, more likely to use an integrated structure. Some use a centralized structure, but integrated really correlated highly to more maturity and success. And the Center of Content Excellence really lends itself well to that. It provides alignment without, being overly rigid. When you're talking about an enterprise with however many global markets, however many teams taking care of content across different products and different customer journeys, you don't necessarily want rigidity, you want alignment. And that's what the Center of Excellence can do.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely have heard of them in many other areas of companies before. So I think it would make a lot of sense in content operations to have that for company. All right. We covered lots of stuff. Was there anything else from the report that you wanted to kind of bring up specifically?
I'll just note, to your point at the beginning that it is a big report.
Mm-hmm.
Lots and lots of data, lots of insights, quotes from participants with their perspectives on a lot of the topics that we've talked about here and more. Also a lot of commentary and guidance just to help make a lot of the insights here actionable. So really exciting to really expand the report this year to that level, and really hope everyone checks it out and is able to take some insights from it and leverage them in their planning for next year.
I will definitely make sure that we put a link to it on the show notes so that people have it to go and look at it, because it was huge. I wasn't expecting it when I opened it to be that big, and I went, oh, I might be here. But lots of good stuff in it.
Thank you.
All right. So before we go, I do want to talk about this. And I wish it was not backwards in the mirror, because you wrote this book. This is your third edition of The Content Advantage, Succeed at Digital Business with Effective Content. Tell me about when you first wrote it, and what kind of possessed you to dive into a book of this magnitude, because there's a lot of stuff in this book. and then what were the updates? Because when did the third edition come out, I guess?
It just came out at the end of last year, so it hasn't even been a year yet. It's just been several months, so pretty fresh off the presses. So I did the initial edition around when I started content science, and did both the book and started content science because I saw a really increase in demand for content on the horizon because of three things that were happening at the time. Broadband internet access was becoming very widely available. Smartphones were becoming a real thing, iPhone really making that a reality, and social media was on the rise. And so I thought to myself, wow, people could be connected with content 24/7. That has huge implications, and no organization I've worked with or for is ready for that. I was just doing kind of independent contracting at the time, and so by that time, between my full-time work in the past and then the contracting I was doing at the time, I had a window into how a lot of different organizations were handling content. I tended, up to that point, to focus a lot on user experience or human-centered design and technical communication, and sort of fill in the content gap whenever I saw it. And I realized, oh wow, this is just a whole different scale and level that we could be facing. I definitely could have been wrong, and I definitely didn't anticipate that things would get to where they are now. So I'm not saying I'm some kind of genius with a crystal ball or something, but yeah, that was the big impetus, is to help organizations get a handle on doing content well, and ultimately to benefit the end user or customer or audience of that content. Ultimately what I love is for people who want useful, beneficial, constructive content to be able to connect with it and have a great experience with it. And helping organizations do that is what I was really looking to achieve with the book. And it's evolved over the editions to kind of address, the progression we've seen, the increased demand of content, more about dealing with scaling content approaches. And with this third edition, I have a lot more about content systems and also more about AI.
Obviously.
So yeah, really excited to bring that into the book and have some useful frameworks and considerations and outlines of, risks to consider with generative AI that I think will hold up as AI becomes more and more of a consideration for organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I haven't read it all, so I won't pretend that I read it all, but I want to, because every time I look at it, I sit down when my husband lets me read a book, because sometimes he likes me to pay attention to him. I just know that there's so much stuff in there, that because content is so core and so foundational to a business, and the ones that understand that will really benefit from this book, because they'll know how to kind of set their frameworks and their operations up the right way, and they know what to think about and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just think that we need more content like that to help organizations understand that it is foundational. It is core. It is what you talk to your customers with. So if you're not doing it right, your products might be great, but if they're not really speaking to the customer the right way, I think it's a waste of time. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point, customers are going to interact with an organization's content far more
yeah,
than they'll interact with the actual, employees or associates or, people that work for the company. I mean, it's just kind of a no-brainer, the scale, the impact or potential impact of content, so important.
yep, absolutely. Oh, and so you have generously offered to give away one for our podcast listeners, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Great. So what I'll do is I'll see who listened in on the podcast, and I might wait and see who listens to the replay a little bit, because sometimes we get a lot more people on the replay, and then we'll
Sure.
figure out how to put them all in a bucket and draw a name, and then we'll announce that and get that out to that person. So thank you. I appreciate that you're doing that for our audience.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to do it. Really excited to get a copy into a new set of hands, and look forward to the feedback on it. And also really appreciate you checking it out, and for the kind words about it.
Yep. And I'll definitely make sure we link to that, as well as the content science on your show notes as well, so that everybody's got all the information they need to find you and your resources and stuff, because you definitely have a lot of stuff. I was looking at the courses and stuff, and I was like really impressed with what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very much appreciate it. Really excited to keep it going. It certainly has not been boring.
Definitely not. So yeah, thanks, Colleen. I really appreciate your coming on today, sharing the insights from your new report and talking to us about content, because yeah, I love it. It's so foundational. I think everybody needs to pay more attention to it.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed talking with you, Barb. Appreciate this really thoughtful conversation, and appreciate being a part of the Content Matters podcast.
Cool. Thanks. So before we go, I just want to thank our sponsor. The Content Matters podcast is brought to you by Discover CX by Ingenix. Ingenix helps companies make content easier to create, manage, and deliver, so customers can find the answers they need. Discover CX is built for teams that need to deliver customer portals, help docs, success sites. So that's more technical communications, technical documentation. Ingenix also supports has a web CMS that supports customer websites, higher education websites. One of the nice things about Ingenix CMS or Discover CX is that you can write your content once, use it everywhere, pull your content together from different sources, publish it to any channel. Built-in XML authoring, AI built in. They have some new AI capabilities. Customer portal, headless delivery, everything you need to keep content clear, consistent, easier to find. You can check out ingenix.com or discovercx.com to learn more about what they offer. And while you're on either site, make sure you sign up for our newsletter, because we keep you up to date on new podcast episodes and lots of other interesting content that you'll want to know about. And and stuttering on my very last thing. So it's a great way to end it. But anyway, thanks everyone for listening, and thank you again, Colleen. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.